What I just done read.
Before anybody asks, my attire today is in honour of our author for this episode, just to prove that it's not only when we are open that we can be all red. Yeah, I know, it's a terrible joke, I'm sorry, but hopefully Mr. Barker will appreciate it. Yes, thank you for joining me again. Hello, my name is Max. This is What I Just Unread. I am once again in my slightly infernal bohemian book corner as we look at the latest book that I've been reading, and just so I can share my thoughts, what I think about it, and whether or not I think you should check it out yourselves. And for those of you who haven't guessed, either by looking at the thumbnail or reading the title, today we will be looking at Volume 6 of Clive Barker's Books of Blood. Before we do, as always, we have the business of our word of the day. This one is kind of technically a request, but also at the same time it's a threat. Thanks to my good friend and the maestro of Billion Bytes, Dean Evans, who has suggested that we do the word hereditatum, which, for those of you who have been long-term fans of the channel, will know that Dean used that as the title for a short documentary that he made in 2020 about the book side of Xadrum. And I must admit, I just thought, oh, that's a really nice word. Didn't really think that much of it. But then he's been twisting my arm to do it as a word of the day. It is a real word. It's a Latin word, which in English means heritage, but it could also be used to mean an heirloom as well. There you are, Dean. Hopefully you're happy. Now let those poor fish go. If you do want to watch the documentary, then, and I'll get it right this time, there will be a link on this side, because I got it wrong last time. But anyway, there we go. Hereditatum. Not quite sure how you'd want to use it in conversation or in your prose, for example. It might be a better one to use if you're a poet, I think. But anyway, I shall leave that with you. So what can I say about Clive Barker that's not already been said? Probably not a lot, so if you know all of this stuff, then please do feel free to skip forward later in the video. But born on the 5th of October 1952, Barker grew up and was educated in his home city of Liverpool, here in the UK. There's a couple of sort of small anecdotes that are generally kind of referred to with regards to Barker's early life. Most notably that at the age of 3 in 1956, he attended an air show on Whit Monday in Liverpool, and along with a crowd of approximately 100,000 spectators, witnessed the unfortunate demise of the French adventurer Leo the Birdman Valentin. Leo was known as the Birdman because he developed a set of fake wings for which he was trying to basically fly like a bird. And on this particular occasion, he was using a new evolution of his wings, which he'd never tested before. And as he was exiting the plane that had taken him up to the required altitude, he bashed the wings against the fuselage of the plane, which maintained that they would not maintain his buoyancy, I suppose, I don't know, altitude or whatever. And as a result of which he plunged towards the ground. And adding to that, his parachute failed to open. Barker has gone on to reference this event several times in his works in later life. It's also curious to note that at that particular air show, Barker, in terms of illustrious Liverpudlians, wasn't the only person in attendance, as at the time there was also a certain Mr. G. Harrison and a Mr. P. McCartney in the audience as well. But as I say, he went to school in Liverpool, where he started to develop an interest in live theatre. In fact, it seems like he was starting to write short plays while he was at school, and which would carry on through into his time at Liverpool University, where he studied English and philosophy. in 1978, Barker started his avant-garde theatre troupe, the Dog Company, which he co-founded with old university friends, some of whom would go on to be long-term collaborators in his later works, including Peter Atkins, who would write the first 3 sequels to Hellraiser, and also Pinhead himself, Doug Bradley. While working for the Dog Company, he would produce 9 plays in 5 years, and also between 82 and 83, a further 3 plays for the Cockpit Youth Theatre as well. It was shortly after that his live theatre work technically comes to an end, because he started to turn his hand towards prose, and what resulted from that is The Books of Blood, written between 1984 and 1985, comprising a total of 28 stories, 30 if you include the wraparound story, The Book of Blood, and its postscript on Jerusalem Street as well. They were broken down into 6 volumes. Volumes 1 to 3 are just known as The Books of Blood. Volumes 4 through 6 were all given a subheading. Now, if I get this right, Volume 4 is The Inhuman Condition, Volume 5 is In the Flesh, and Volume 6 is Cabal.
Interesting. Those are all the titles of stories from the volumes.
Are they?
Except for Cabal.
Ah. Sorry, words from the gods there, people. That they did rather well is an understatement. The books would go on to win both the British Fantasy and the World Fantasy Awards for their respective years. They also spawned, which is probably now a very famous quote from I suppose you'd call him the previous master of horror, Stephen King, who, and I think is actually on the front cover of Volume 1, where he says, "I have seen the future of horror, and his name is Clive Barker." Curiously enough, there is also a quote from another horror contemporary on here, from Ramsey Campbell, which says, "Barker is a writer who's prepared to go all the way, wherever the logic of his imagination may lead him." Today, obviously, I think everyone really knows who Clive Barker is. Again, it's another one that I've had to make a kind of a list of his general kind of accomplishments as a novelist, a playwright, a film director, a games producer, and they've just shortened it on here to a visual artist, to go with the fact that he's a painter and all these other wonderful things that he's achieved in his life. I believe now he lives in California. Yeah, and I think he's at 70. I know he's had some health issues sort of in later life, but that's going further than we need to. I suppose any other kind of anecdote that, and again, it's a kind of one I wasn't sure whether I was going to include it, especially because I know it's something about his life that even today I understand causes him no little distress, that it appears that in his early life, before fame found him, as it were, part of how he supported himself was as a prostitute. I think, again, I'm sure I read somewhere in an interview that it was one of the darkest periods of his life. There's something quite sobering about that, the degrees that people will go to pursue their dreams. So, much respect to it. So just generally, before I look at the Books of Blood in general, and obviously this volume itself, I have read some Barker prior to this. I do have Volume 1 of the Books of Blood, which, damn you gremlins, much like my copy of The Lost, has disappeared into a parallel dimension somewhere. So I'm sorry I can't show you that, especially as it is actually in the same series, in the same edition as this one. I've also found Barker, for me, can be a little bit hit and miss. Not that anything is very badly written, it's not. It's just, I think it's a question of expectation. Barker has a reputation of being one of the most visual, I suppose, in terms of like body horror in literature. And so you kind of expect to be shocked or disturbed. Once, I think, for me personally, but I'll come on to that a bit more in a bit. But I mean, from the other stuff of his that I've read, like Weave World, Magica, and Everville as well. Again, they're brilliant stories. Although I found Magica got away from me a bit. I think it was a bit a bit self-indulgent and longer than it needed to be. But I'm just saying that to give you an understanding of my kind of history with Barker's works. But the Books of Blood themselves, whew, on top of what I've already said, I would also add to that there is at least one story from every volume that has been translated on the silver screen, more often than not by Barker himself. So, quick list here for you. So from Volume 1, which was The Midnight Meat Train, which was made into a film with Vinnie Jones. And I can't remember the other guy that was in it. Was it Paul Walker? It was somebody like that. I can't remember. Anyway, but Volume 2 was A Brood, which I don't think I've seen that. I know that was made into a... It says it was made into a film, but I don't know much more about it. From Volume 3, you've got Rawhead Rex. Volume 4, you've got The Body Politic, which apparently was made into one of the excerpts in a movie anthology called Quicksilver Highway, was it? Yeah, never seen it. Volume 5 is probably the one that most people will know, which was The Forbidden. If you have seen arguably the best horror film of 1990, Candyman, then you know the story of The Forbidden. And then the last one from this particular volume is The Last Illusion, which Barker himself adapted into Lord of Illusions, which also... Well, it would be unrecognisable if you see the film, because there are certain key characters and elements of The Last Illusion that were combined with another story from one of the earlier Books of Blood, Skins of the Father, which became Lord of Illusions. So I must admit, I think that mine would be in Volume 3, so I haven't read that one, so I don't know Skins of the Father. But the movie itself is actually worth checking out. I'm sorry, I didn't get a chance to check the actor's name, but the guy who plays Nix in that, both his performance and the villain himself, yeah, they deserve to be on a par with the likes of Candyman or Pinhead as an antagonist. He's brilliant. I did see somewhere that Hulu did an adaptation of the entire run. I think they did a series of them in 2020, but I don't have Hulu, so I've never seen it. I don't know how good a job they did of it. But if anybody does know if they were any good, please do let us know in the comments below. One of the beauties of Barker's writing, and it's been cited by probably more erudite people than me before now, is his ability to gel genres together. Nothing in any of these books is purely horror. It's horror and something else. Whether that's comedy or action or a thriller. He's brilliant at meshing these genres together. Partly in a sense of misdirection, but also just to accentuate the horror elements that you end up getting. And it's sometimes, especially when reading these, you kind of have to remind yourself of that sometimes. Again, especially if you only know Barker by repute, you're kind of expecting something a lot more run-of-the-mill horror fiction. And these aren't that. You have to remember to kind of step outside of yourself and step outside of your expectations of what you're going to get. So this volume in itself, as I say, comprises 4 stories, 5 if you include the wraparound on Jerusalem Street. So the stories are The Life of Death, How Spoilers Bleed, Twilight at the Towers, and The Last Illusion. I don't want to go through all of them because, again, I don't want to spoil anything. How I've just read them out there is the order that they appear in the book. Here will be a list of how I rate them, obviously from first to last, in terms of the ones that I enjoyed the most. There was nothing in any of these stories that I found particularly disturbing. This isn't so much, this is definitely expectation, because Barker slightly ruined me in a previous volume. If you've read Volume 1, then you will have read In the Hills, the Cities. To quote from another good friend of mine, from my friend Ben, that's the kind of story that crawls inside your mind and looks out of your eyes. I was very disturbed for about 2-3 days after reading it. So coming into this, I was hoping for something similar, and there isn't. And again, nothing bad about the stories that are here. They are all very well written, very well executed. Characterizations are brilliant, as you'd expect from a masterful writer like Barker. But yeah, I didn't find anything in here that really gave me the willies, as it were. Of the stories that are in here, the two really that I'd just like to talk about, which were my favourite two, Twilight at the Towers is brilliant, and again, it kind of takes the horror elements and then mashes those into what's essentially a spy thriller. And it works really, really well. Kept me guessing for a while as to what was actually going on, but it is worth a look. It's very Frederick Forsyth kind of feel to it, which is really nice. But again, for me, the runaway one, the standout story in here is The Last Illusion. Not only because it introduces Barker's paranormal investigator Harry D'Amour, but again, it's this mishmash of horror and a noir story. Again, very much in the model of Raymond Chandler. And it works really well. It's one of those wonderful short stories that grabs you by the scruff of the neck on the first page, shakes you around a bit, and then dumps you out at the end, whether you're ready to be or not. And it's fantastic. It's a shame that when they did the movie, they didn't make it more like the story itself, because that would have been awesome. Although, again, as I said, I have mentioned the movie a couple of times. It is worth a look. I did think that Scott Bakula does put in a pretty good turn as Harry D'Amour. The other two stories in here, again, they're good. I don't know. I just found them... Nothing, again, wrong with the setup. I mean, was it The Life of Death? Has a slightly more black humour feel to it. But I don't know, some of the setup of it just... it broke my suspension of disbelief a little bit. And How Spoilers Bleed, which is... I was going to say something a bit more like... and the name's gone out of my head. It's here somewhere. I know it's here somewhere. It is there. Rider Haggard. It's not obviously set in that setting. It's not set in the same period as, say, like Alan Quatermain. But it is a group of Westerners trying to stake their claim in the South American jungle. And what they get as a result of it is not pleasant. Let's say that. And again, it's a brilliant story, but I struggle to be invested in it, personally. The product itself, as I said, this one is kind of a special one. So, as I understand it, this is the original... Cough! So this is the original British publication, released by Sphere Books, which comes with, as I mentioned a couple of times there, the wraparound story on Jerusalem Street, which closes the opening of the first Book of Blood, the Book of Blood, which is the setup for how all of these stories come to public attention, which is really, really nice to have. As an artifact, its significance for that reason alone it does make it quite valuable, not just financially, but aesthetically as well. It's a shame, though, that the actual product itself, yeah. The worst problem, and again I've turned to a brilliant page, is this. As you can probably see there, the typesetting is very deep into the page, and because it has a certain amount of actual value, you don't want to really be doing anything that might break the spine, but you kind of have to be able to read it, which unfortunately is probably going to mean it's going to lose points when we come to the voting. Otherwise, it is very nice. I mean, again, I know I do normally read off the back, but I won't, because it's literally stuff from one of the stories. Jesus. Back when you could buy a paperback for £1.50. Would I recommend it? Yeah, I think I would. As I said, I personally wasn't moved by everything in it, but if only for completion, if you've read any of the others, then it is worth getting. In fact, I would go so far as to say it's actually worth getting just for The Last Illusion, because it is an excellent story. Again, it's another one of those ones that, if I didn't have other stuff to read, I could quite happily sit down and read it again. I did enjoy it that much. But I would say, if you are, I mean, you don't need to have all of them, because there's, as I said, apart from the kind of the wraparound two little elements from this and the first volume, they're not connected in any way at all. So don't feel like you need to read them all in order. It doesn't really matter. But yeah. Again, for anybody who wants to know anything about Barker, it's a good place to start. And again, especially as this is literally his literary debut. Let's put it that way. I suppose the only other thing I would say with regards to, not so much to do with this, but to do with Barker in general, and hopefully if he ever does get to see this, I'd just like to say thank you, because whether I'm shocked, disturbed, or moved in any way or not by Barker's work, there is something of a muse element to it. Every time I've ever read Barker, I have very visual and very disturbing dreams, regardless of how I'm intellectually interacting with the material. So much so that when I do get the opportunity to go back and start doing some proper horror writing again, I will probably have some Barker on tap just to help with the visuals. So, for that, Clive, thank you very much. Right. Whew. Shall we talk about eyes? Yeah, let's talk about eyes. I'm going to go and do the eye thing with this. In fact, I don't need that, do I? This. I just need that. Oh. I do need this. Yes, I'm going to go and do the thing. While I do that, I shall leave you in the capable hands of my glittery assistant here, who will convince you to, like the denizens of Midian, to remove your skin to reveal the face underneath. We're back. Oh, tea. Nom, 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 nom. Okay, so, it was difficult. I wasn't sure. I almost gave it the big eye as for the product, simply because of what the volume itself represents. Unfortunately, like the last one, it is going to be the two second largest eyes that we've gone for here today. As I said, there wasn't anything that really shocked me in this, even though I did really enjoy it. So, in that respect, I can't quite give it the huge eye for the actual quality of the writing itself, the stories themselves. And again, as I've just said, there's a few small things about the product itself that made it a little bit annoying. I think what I should have done maybe is kept that one, that's my keeper copy, and then bought a newer edition, possibly one of the ones that Barker did the cover art for reading purposes. I don't know. But what I have done is I have just put the eyes slightly closer together, just to freak people out. There we go. So that's Barker down. I'm going to put that somewhere out of the way. Unfortunately, not with book one, because I don't know where the bastard thing is. Bloody gremlins. But we can go to the list. Oh, I have decided I am going to get rid of this scrappy old piece of thing. So at some point soon, I'm going to actually put my list in this book, because I realise that I'm already over halfway through with my notes on stuff, and we've barely covered half the first page if I'm going to cover the whole thing in eyes, so it actually makes more sense to keep the list in here. Hopefully I'll have that for you by next time. Where are we? So, here we go. This is one of the new books that we added, so there we go. Book of Blood, volume 6. I don't know if you can see that. There. That one is off the list. Next. So, I meant to say earlier, so this copy, this book, and also actually the next book we're going to be looking at, these were presents from another friend of mine, from my friend Simon Morgan, who was having a bit of a clear out. So we will be staying on with the supernatural for a little bit longer. This one's going to get me into trouble. Possibly. We will see. We will see. It might get me into trouble. So next up we will be having a look at a previous master of the supernatural, as we'll be talking about Strange Conflict, a black magic story by Dennis Wheatley. This one's got some interesting things in it, but we'll discuss that when we get to it. So again, thank you for joining me to hear me ramble on ad infinitum about books. And also, of course, thank you for stopping and checking out the videos. And if you do like what I do here, please do hit the like button, the subscribe button, etc., etc. I'm going to go and curl up somewhere and summon Satan with Mr. Wheatley. Until next time, get thee gone.
We'll tear your soul apart.
That they did rather well is an understatement. The Books of Blood, the Books of Blood would go. Oh Jesus!